I was coming to talk about this non-preemptive kernel. So I'm trying to schedule, let's say the task 1 inside and task 2. I wanted to call it as a preemptive scheduling algorithm. Okay. If I'm going to run on a non-preemptive kernel, the word non-preemptive kernel means if I'm running a program inside the system, which is referred to task in an operating system, means the non-preemptive kernel will not give up the processor time till this task completes its duration. Okay, let's see the same scenario. Low priority task is running in the system right now, and suddenly we see a interrupt being generated, and this particular interrupt is a high priority task right now. So what would happen right now is that this high priority task is not given the processor time, and a low priority task will still keep on running in a non-preemptive kernel. Okay, so only when this low priority task completes its time period, the uh, the task will give up the processor, and then the high priority task will start running inside the processor right now. So what has happened out of this thing is that low priority task relinquishes the CPU only after it has completed its period of time. Let's analyze this with an example. Let's say that I have a flight landing system. Okay, and during the flight landing system, the landing gear will check whether all the process has been already validated. Is the temperature perfect for me to land? Is the signal received from the base is ready for me to run this to land the plane right now? So all the jobs has to be validated, and then I'll take a decision whether I can land it. And during this particular scenario, I have to release the landing gear to land the flight right now. What would happen if there is a high priority task that the landing gear has to happen due to an urgent scenario, and a low priority task takes up the system, and because of it the landing gear is not getting released due to it? What would happen in this scenario is that there is a catastrophic event due to which accidents are prone to happen. Okay, so we cannot expect to go to install our Windows operating system inside a flight operating scenario, and then I can control all my operations in the Windows. It is not perfectly possible in that particular scenario. I have to depend on what is called as preemptive kernel in this particular. Let's analyze the same example. There is a low priority task that is running inside the system, and now I have a high priority task that is requesting the system time right now. Due to this preemptive kernel in nature, what would happen is that the low priority task is taken out of the processor, and a high priority task is given the processor time, because it's something critical is going to happen, and the processor has to service that particular critical event. So only then that particular critical event is serviced, then the low priority task will be given the CPU time for it to complete its particular event. Till the high priority task is completing its priority level, the low priority task is not given the CPU time. Okay, so these are called as preemptive kernel, and usually most of the real-time operating systems are going to be preemptive kernel. Only then, because of this preemptive kernel in nature, our efficiency of a real-time operating system can be significantly improved, and because of which the performance also improved. Okay, so you can validate yourself. The ISR makes high priority task ready, and then this CPU is provided to a high priority task than a low priority task in comparison. Okay, so let's also analyze what is called as context switching in a real-time operating system. Okay, so here we have three different tasks that is going to run this particular context switching. I also had a graphical illustration. Yes, I had this thing. Okay, so let me show this context switching using this particular example. I have a low priority task A, and I have a high priority task B. Okay, and then my low priority task is currently running inside the system, task A. where the operations of task A is, first of all, it is executing this register. A is moved with the value 0A, and then register B is moved with the value 0F. When this assembly instruction is executing, suddenly I get a high priority task. Okay. So what happens is that the processor gives up, and what happens during this particular event is that this task takes the processor running time right now. So see to it, currently what is happening is that in the high priority task, I'm moving some value from the port A of that particular microcontroller into B register. Okay. So remember that already in the low priority task, I am having a value register B moving with some value 0F, whereas I am receiving some other value in a high priority task in the same B register, some value from the port A. Okay, and I'm executing in the instruction mul a comma b, which is the multiplication of a and b, and a is the resultant value is stored in the A register right now. So if this operation is completed, and then I displace the value into some, I move the value to some other port and then give up the high priority task back. So what would happen is that this is where this low priority task was executing, and then this high priority task will start, it's a low priority task will start executing right now. If it starts executing this particular instruction, add a comma b, it would end up giving wrong result, because I had moved a value 0F, whereas here I've moved this B value with some other value. Okay. So what should happen during context switching is that when I'm moving giving up the task, okay, I'm giving task A all the registers to task high priority task that needs to operate the system right now. So it should save the contents of these particular value either in stack, in memory. Okay, only then it can give up the processor. Okay, so it should do the saving of the register value, and the context switch happens, and then this event will run all this process. And then what happens is that when it relinquishes, gives up the system back for its execution, here what should happen is that add a comma b should add only 0a plus 0f. So before it is taking up the operation from the stack, all the value has to be loaded, and then this actually runs this particular add a comma b, which will properly run right now. Okay, so that is what this context switching is going to do. When I move from one task to other task, what should happen is that whatever the contents that I am executing right now, I am working with right now, have to be saved in the memory. Only then it can transfer the context of that particular operation for the task that it is executing. And then we'll also have to save the context in the stack. And then let's say from context 1 to context 2, another switch is happening right now. Then we should preserve that particular contents also in the memory, of course in the stack, and then give up. So when the context switching gives up, it should happen in a last in first out manner, because we are saving in stack. Okay, remember in stack we always save one top of the other. So when something has to be taken out, I have to take out from the top. Okay, so it should happen not in the order that came up, but in the order what was sitting in the top, and then it has to execute from that particular place. Okay, that is what context switching should happen in real-time operating system. Okay, and then with respect to managing the memory in real-time operating system, it is very significant and little different from the operating system perspective, because here in operating system we have enough memory, and because of that we may be able to define the amount of memory that is specified for RAM, and then amount of memory that is specified for the ROM purpose, and then what is the cache, and then inside the ROM again we'll define what is the core memory, what is the data memory, all those are going to happen. But whereas in a real-time operating system we have a very constrained memory operating device. So which means we'll have to manage our memory little efficiently, which is done usually by memory management unit. Okay, and of course there is going to be code memory and data memory as defined by the system architecture, and it has to efficiently use this particular system memory in order to operate this memory management inside a real-time operating system. And this is usually done by memory mapping, which is identifying which is the physical address space, and also it has a virtual address to find the logical address that will be usually saved in the memory map. Okay, and this memory map, let's talk about this static memory versus dynamic memory. Okay, allocating all memory statically, which is computed at the compile time. Static memory is usually allocated at the compile time. Okay, and then the advantage of working with the static memory is that there will be no memory related bugs, because we know if just at the compile time we are going to define what is the memory that are going to be used, and then we know there is no new memory allocation that is not going to happen over there, due to which memory related bugs may not happen. But whereas what would happen is that the memory that we are allocating at statically at the compile time, if it's keep on occupied by a code memory that is keep on generating some data, due to which memory leaks may happen during that scenario. And because of the memory failure, there would be some issues that would be happening. Dangling pointer is one example where this would lead to this particular scenario. And here, all data is either global function, which is static, and or even local to a function in nature. Okay, let's say the same. The dynamic memory allocation. This dynamic memory allocation, the RTOS uses the kernel. Even after the compile time, dynamically we can allocate the memory. So it is significant during runtime. If I need a memory to be allocated, I can depend on this dynamic memory allocation processes. Okay, and usually this is referred to heap. Okay, also stack also comes under this dynamic memory allocation. Okay, so this program code memory, program data memory, system stack, all these are going to be part of this dynamic memory allocation. Okay, the difference between the stack and heap in this memory management, let us understand. The heap and stack can change its value at runtime, just like the dynamic memory allocation. Okay, but whereas this heap the stack keeps growing, and it is known what is the amount of stack memory, and there is only one operation that we are going to do. Okay, I'm sorry, two operations. One is push, one is pop. Only these two operations are going to happen in a stack based memory, and it is usually LIFO in nature. But whereas heap memory is like a contiguous blocks of memory, just like this. Okay, I have a contiguous block of memory. I can keep allocating only certain amount of memory. If only I would need only this amount of time, I will call only this amount of memory by a call, and then that would allocate this amount of memory, and this amount of memory is available to me. If there is only 1 MB of memory that is available, allocate only 32 KB here, so the rest of the memory is free to me to use for the future use. Okay, so dynamically I can allocate as the amount of memory that I would need from this particular heap memory, and there are certain function calls available to execute in C program for this heap memory. And the key difference again here is that in stack, the allocation and deallocation is done automatically because it is defined by a LIFO and push and pop function. But handling the heap memory is going to be costlier in nature, because sometimes it is going to be managed by the program. Usually, not sometimes, usually it is managed by the programmer. Sometimes there may be a memory leak. Sometimes there may be a memory shortage, because of which it may lead to fragmentation. Okay, fragmentation is a place of memory where I would allocate a random amount of memory, and sometimes I wouldn't see the fragments of memory allocated, whereas let's say 1 MB of memory is getting allocated, and I need 1 MB of memory is needed right now in a 2 MB memory processor, but I have allocated contiguously 32 KB, KB space of memory. 1 MB memory physically will be available, but virtually the place will not be available for the processor to identify where should I bring in this 1 MB of memory. And because of which the memory shortage problem will happen in that particular scenario. Okay, and then the stack frame access is easier than the heap frame. Because of this, the stack is easier to operate, and this is cache friendly. But whereas in the heap frames, it is dispersed throughout the memory. We need to remember where I have saved, what are the memories that I have consumed, and then if the programmer is not efficient enough to release the memory, it would keep occupied in nature. And then stack is not flexible, but whereas the heap is flexible, I can handle it as I would need efficient. If I have an efficient programmer, I can handle the heap very efficiently. And accessing time for heap is going to take longer period of time, and also that heap is a global function, so I can handle from any function in this particular heap memory. Okay, so that would summarize the key important uh, uh, things that I could like to share in real-time operating system. Coming to this carrier perspective in real-time operating system, is that I did a brief survey from various job portals and identified that the average salary of a person who has skill in real-time operating system is somewhere around 7.25 lakhs. Okay, so that was for an engineer who has an experience of 2 years. A fresher would immediately get somewhere around the 4 to 5 lakhs. That's the average salary of a person who has a skill in real-time operating system, and this skill is one of the most demanded skill in the industry. Okay, remember, if you are going to work with IoT and AI, all these are very good. In future, we would get what is called as AI on the edge. Okay, artificial intelligence on the edge, which is going to run on a microcontroller. We know operating system, sorry, artificial intelligence that is running on the servers. That is good. Future scenarios, there are going to be skills that would be needed to run an AI on the edge. And to run an AI on the edge, RTOS is one of the essential skill there. Okay, and your salary will definitely get increased if you get a very good learning from this real-time operating system. And the essential skills that you would have to learn from this particular to get this good place here is that you should understand all the key terminologies, learn and work with any real-time operating system. There are a lot of real-time operating system right from FreeRTOS, which is now widely used in AWS. And then VxWorks is being used by Intel widely. You should have a good programming knowledge on C and C++. That would take you to any programming platform that you can work with. And then you should know how to handle memory management, file system, threading, managing tasks, multitasking. You should know how to write device drivers, which is referred as board support packages here. Work with embedded Linux, work with various communication protocols, because we need to take data into the system, work with this data. All these are going to be here. And then write a middleware for this thing. Okay, so touch upon all these key skills. I'm sure you're going to grab a good place over there. Okay, so I would close my session with this particular inputs.